you guys come out specifically for the poltergeist then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Covering some of the podcasts that we've done.
No problem. So, to understand what the poltergeist is, we need to understand a little bit more history about this area. So I appreciate I've given you quite a lot of history tonight already. I will try and do my best to condense it into 3 to 5 minutes for you. The history that I need to tell you is complicated and vast, so I'm going to give you an incredibly simplified version of it. There is a lot more nuance, a lot more detail, but we'd be here for hours. So if something doesn't sound quite right, bear with me, I'm going to give you the gist. So, to understand what the Covenanters prison is and who the Covenanters were, we need to go back to the reign of Queen Elizabeth I of England, the Virgin Queen. Is everyone familiar with her? White face, bad teeth. Yeah. Okay, played by Kate Blanchett in the film.
Don't pick on the Aussies.
Good film. So, she was Queen of England. We had a King of Scotland at the time that she died, King James VI of Scotland. Elizabeth was the Queen of England. Very famously, she died without an heir. This meant that when she died, James VI inherited the English throne. It became James VI and first. He united the monarchy at that time. We had one king, 2 monarchies as one. He did not unite the churches at this time. We still have the Church of England and the Church of Scotland. So these worshipped in very different ways. Because of Henry VIII and his divorce, the Church of England believed that the king or the monarch was the head of the church and God's representative on earth. This means they were worshipped on earth as a god, essentially. In Scotland, we were Presbyterian, so we believed that when we prayed directly to the big man. The king was the king, God was God, the two were nothing like each other. So, when James came into power, he more or less ignored this. He wanted his reign to be smooth, he didn't want a civil war. And so he let people carry on worshipping however they wanted to, more or less. He didn't make a thing of it. The problem started when Charles I, so James's son, when he inherited the throne. Now, Charles I was very arrogant, very stupid, very spoiled, and very, very vain. Now, I've mentioned Tinder once already tonight. I think I have PTSD from using it, if I'm honest. But if he was on Tinder, he would be a walking red flag. Swipe left, leave the man alone, we want nothing to do with him. In one of his palaces, on his bedroom ceiling, he had a mural of Hercules fighting a lion. It's a very famous Greek myth. When he came to power, he had it repainted to incorporate his own face. So when he was with his mistress, he could look up at himself as a Greek god. Swipe left, leave the man alone. Don't like him. So when he came into power, he decided that he quite liked the way the English prayed. He liked being recognised as a god on earth, and he wanted Scotland to do the same thing. And the people of Scotland said, "You're right. Swipe left. Go away." So Charles put someone in charge of making sure that the Scottish prayed the English way. This man was called Bloody George McKenzie. McKenzie is buried in that mausoleum over there with the domed top with the acorn on the top. See? Very close to this site, which becomes relevant in a moment. George McKenzie tried a few things. First off, he installed bishops into the churches here, and the people of Scotland went, "Nah, still not really interested in praying the English way." Then he imposed curfews, and the people of Scotland still said, "No, you're all right, honestly, we're not going to pray the English way." Then he imposed fines, and the people of Scotland said, "Still no, sorry." And then Charles I had a tantrum of epic proportions. He said, "Burn their Bibles, burn their hymn sheets, burn their prayer books, burn everything they have. We're going to give them a new Book of Common Prayer, and if the only thing they have to use is that Book of Common Prayer, then they have to worship the English way, they have to worship me as a god." And the people of Scotland went, "Thought about it, but probably not, no, I'm not having that." So, it all came to a head not far from where we started out tonight, St Giles Cathedral. There was a market taking place in the Royal Mile, and there was an old lady on the market, on a market stall called Jenny Geddes. And she was so angry and so distressed by what was happening with the church that when she saw the Bishop of St Giles walking up the Royal Mile, she threw her chair at him. It hit him, and it sparked a 3-day riot across the city of Edinburgh. This riot eventually led to the English Civil War and the beheading of Charles I. So a small old Scottish woman brought down the monarchy. Yay! I wonder if she ever knew she did that. My favourite person in history. As part of these riots, the National Covenant was formed. This was a group of wealthy men who came together as if they weren't happy with Charles I being king, they weren't happy with the changes being made in the church, and they were going to do something about it. They drew up a document called the National Covenant, which they all signed, and then they raised an army of Covenanters. About 18,000 of them-ish altogether, and they marched down to England to attack their own king. And this is where I'm not particularly proud of my accent, because the English massacred them. Out of 18,000 men that marched south, only 1,500 of them returned alive.
Wow.
They were brought back as prisoners under Bloody George McKenzie, who had to decide what to do with them. He brought them here. Now, the tombs you can see on either side in here in the 1600s did not exist. This was an open burial field. The walls were higher and there were a couple of watchtowers that have long since disappeared. Now, George McKenzie brought 1,500 men here, he locked them inside, and he said, I will think about what to do with you tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes, he always found something better to do. He couldn't be bothered to deal with them. And so these men were in there, open air, for 9 months over a Scottish winter. The only food that they were given was what they were thrown by the soldiers guarding them, more to watch them fight over than any kind of sustenance. Anyone who tried to escape or anyone who tried to help them was beheaded, and their heads were placed on spikes above the railings here. This is widely considered to be one of the world's first concentration camps. After 9 months, most of them were dead of either starvation or exposure. And then George McKenzie remembered them, and he gave them a choice. So they could repent and they'd be allowed to go home. I'm very sorry, I think I have hay fever. Better that than I snot it here. I could say it's ectoplasm, you know, I'm fine. So they were given a choice. They could repent and they'd be allowed to go home. Some of them did that, not very many. Others were considered young enough and still just about strong enough to be good breeding stock, and they were put on a ship that was bound for Virginia in the colonies. But the ship sank not long after it left Leith Dock, and they all drowned, so they didn't get very far either. The rest of them, about 150, were slaughtered where they stood, and they are buried just inside the gates beneath the path we were about to walk over. There is an incredible amount of negative energy in this space. We believe this is what a poltergeist is, a collection of negative energy. There are 2 incidents which I will tell you about when we get in there. One of them gave rise to the McKenzie Poltergeist, the other turned it into the entity we understand it to be today. We call it the McKenzie Poltergeist not because we think it is the spirit of George McKenzie. That isn't what a poltergeist is. We call it that because the first documented account of a poltergeist took place outside the McKenzie mausoleum. So, by the way, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, isn't it, that the man responsible for all that pain and death and torture is buried there in one of the most popular mausoleums in the Kirkyard. So, as I said before, 140 interactions with the poltergeist have resulted in knockouts where people fall unconscious. Lots of people say they feel dizzy or sick inside the Black Mausoleum. If you feel dizzy, sick, claustrophobic, panicky, otherwise want to leave at any point, please let me know. I will get you out, it's not a problem. I'd much rather that than have you fall over. Starters, it interrupts my talk, and that's a pain. Secondly, it's quite tricky to get paramedics down there. And thirdly, I am an anatomist. If anyone falls over tonight, I will drag you away by your ankles. You'll never be seen